What is up? And welcome back to the CKM Red Rugby League channel and the Red Star app as well, wherever you are joining us from. It is Monday. It is time to delve into the Rugby League report. We are going to be covering some big talking points, plenty of discussion points as ever. My good friend Luke Jobson is here to help take me through them. How are you going, mate?
Oh, even better now that you've said good friend, mate. I'm glad we're on that level. Yeah, really good. Crazy week. Real crazy week in the world of rugby league, not only here in Australia, but all around the world. It's getting into crunch time for a lot of competitions. The NRL is into the stretch. The UK is heating up. Serbian Rugby League, it's on a break, but while it's on a break domestically, internationally, they're rolling around. There's been, a couple of big games, big international games here in Sydney as well. We had Brazil and the Philippines. Things are going good, mate. It's going real well for rugby league. How are you?
Mate, I am absolutely fantastic, and I'm very much looking forward to this show. And with that, we'll jump straight into topic number one, which is Serbia win their second international of their international break. They beat Bulgaria this weekend, 28-16. Header facing Montenegro this weekend. So while the Serbian calendar is on a little bit of a break, the boys are not letting up. It's great to see. So I mean, we'll take you through that game. Tries from I believe Ilic, who plays for Radnički Niš. Red Stars' very own Nikola Mladenovic grabbing a double, Ilic grabbing two as well, and Partizan's Kanjeta getting over. And it's Stojkovic who managed to convert 4 out of 6 goals for the Serbian under-20 side, and then going over to the Bulgarian scorers, Ivanov, Debreliev and Kostadinov getting the tries, and Rasol converting 2 out of 3. And you have no idea how happy I am that I managed to make it through those names without butchering them. So very pleased with that. I mean, what a game, 28-16. It was close at the half. Bulgaria absolutely hanging with the Serbian boys for the most part of the game. Fast start from Serbia, racing out, grabbed 2 tries. Ilic and Mladenovic getting over. Bulgaria seemed to bounce back. They rallied a little bit through Ivanov, and then the game just hit a little bit of an arm wrestle in the middle part. But I mean, quality for international rugby league, especially around Europe, as that continues to develop.
Yeah, no, superb game for all involved. Obviously, our Serbian boys were a little on the young side compared to the Bulgarians, who more or less put out a full strength team. But a fantastic effort by Serbia, as you mentioned, the quick start really got Bulgaria there on the back foot, who did well to score 2 on the trot to either side of half time. That really is just that nice little 1-2 sucker punch to get a team on the back foot, especially in the international competitions. But Ilic and is it Kreta? I apologize. Grinjeta. There you go. I apologize for butchering that. My Serbian is about as good as my rugby league playing skills. But big effort by the boys, a great advertisement for not only Serbian Rugby League, but for Bulgarian Rugby League as well. It's great to see them getting around, getting onto the field after what's been a crazy 18 months now with COVID. It feels weird to say that. I feel disgusted saying that. But it's good to see some international rugby league back in Europe, back on live platforms as well. It's just good fun to see.
Yeah, exactly. And for those that weren't aware, that game was actually broadcast live and exclusively on SportsFlick. You've got the ticker going across the bottom there. Go to www.sportsflickglobal.com and sign up there using code SRL21, and you can watch this weekend's game against Montenegro and next weekend's game against Albania as well. As we mentioned, that the domestic competition may be on a little bit of a hiatus now for the next few weeks, but the international calendar is jam-packed, and the boys in Serbia are putting in a big stint and really delivering. So already played against Bosnia the previous week, grabbed a win there, went out to Sofia in Bulgaria, ran close there. There's a little bit of traveling. The Serbian boys, they certainly don't mind it. Especially these, the younger blokes who've been in the system a little bit. they're getting used to it. And with the Balkan Super League as well, they're only going to be getting used to more travelling and seeing some more great cities. And it's great to see cities like Sofia in Bulgaria, really embracing rugby league. They had a game there just last week, Lokomotiv Sofia in the Balkan Super League. So Bulgarian Rugby League is definitely coming to prominence, but the Serbian Rugby League at the minute is going from strength to strength, and the boys are really digging in, and he's showing the class. I mean, you've Nikola Modernovic now. He's into his second season at first grade in Red Star, bagging 2 tries. He's been quality out of dummy half for us this season, and quality out of dummy half for Serbia as well. You only had to watch him against Bosnia. Kept very busy, kept very active. Only a small player as well, but not afraid to put his body about, and that's great when you've got face teams like Partizan and Radnički Niš who just come with a plethora of large bodies up the middle.
Yeah, exactly. And not only is it great for the youth of Serbia that it was, a U21 Serbia side that got the one, got the dub, but it's great for rugby league in general. As you mentioned, this week against Albania, live and exclusive on Sports Flick. But it's also the fact that there's not much rugby league going on this week, not in Australia at least. You got your 2 Origin games and not much else. You've obviously got the Super League, COVID dependent, mind you, and we'll get to that. But if you need some rugby league, if you need that fixed, what better than to watch some international rugby league? Serbia against Albania. The Albanians will want to come out. They'll come out firing. We know that. They've got some big boys, some stupidly big boys. Like, these are some big boppers that potentially could make a couple of these locks and props in the NRL look small. So it's going to be a cracking game down the middle. I can't wait. And as we said, it's live and exclusive on Sports Flick. You can join Sports Flick. You can see the promo code SRL21 to get Sports Flick discounted. What better time than now?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's worth mentioning the fact that some of these boys have already made the trip out to Montenegro once this season so far, when they played Southern Region, who are now part of the Serbian domestic competition as part of their growth platform and the foundations that they're developing there. So we've already seen that some of these boys can play. They've got some big mobile forwards. They've got some nippy wings. Like, it's going to be a quality match, and we'll get off that one. But before we do, it is worthwhile mentioning that this week's Rugby League report is brought to you by the team over at Recast. Ourselves over at CK and Red Rugby League, we have joined the Recast family, and I know what you're thinking. Who are Recast? Recast are a brand new social platform where you can help your favorite content creators by watching and resharing their content. How many times have you been on Twitter? You've seen a good tweet and thought, you know what, that's worth a retweet. Exactly the same premise. You go on there, you share your favorite videos, and you watch and you earn along with your favorite content creators. So there will be other rugby league clubs and other rugby league platforms joining the Recast family in the coming weeks. So make sure you head over to Recast. So that's www.recast.app. Give it a sign up, give it a check out. It's completely free. It costs you nothing, and you help out your favorite content creators and some of your favorite sports teams as well, which will be joining. So with that, then we'll move on to topic number 2, and it is the unfortunate news of the NARL being postponed to 2022. It was almost a little bit of an inevitability after the news that the Western Conference. No, it was the Eastern Conference. The Eastern Conference. No, it was the West.
Western Conference was first. I know it's early over there, mate. Western Conference was postponed to 2022 first. It was a week after Ohio, I believe, was announced as like a coaching signing. We were hopeful because we still had the 6 teams on the East. We still had Toronto and Ottawa as well. But yeah, Eastern Conference then not long before the competition started as well. Credit where credit's due. They went until the very last minute to try and to get it going. It couldn't happen. It's postponed to 2022. But the good news, if there's a shining light out of this, is allegedly the rumors have it that the Canada Cup will still continue in 2021. It'll be a 2-game series, home at Toronto, home at Ottawa. So it sucks that the NARL, won't be going for 2021, but there's still going to be some domestic action in Canada. I'm still really looking forward to it, and who knows, man? Hopefully that's the catalyst for the start of potentially something special in Canada in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it is unfortunate. The insurance was just ridiculous with the time that we are living in, unfortunately. Having to try and get insurance for those games, having to get COVID testing, supplies, the risk associated with if one team went down with COVID, it potentially moves the entire roster and, the rest of the teams out as well. It was just, the risk was far greater than the reward. And if there's one thing we've seen out of the NARL, it's they're very good at being able to promote and be able to do what they're good at. And, you got the boys over at Cleveland, Portland, Brooklyn, the Atlanta Rhinos and the other boys out there as well that are now going to have another year to be able to really refine and hone in on this product to make it as great as it can be. So by no means was the NARL rushed. It's just, unfortunately, now is not the time for it, but they're going to be cracking on. They're going to be doing what they can to make sure that it goes ahead in 2022. As you did mention, there are still rumblings that the Canada Cup will be going ahead, so expect to see announcements out of Toronto and Ottawa. As things currently stand, if anything changes, we will update you, so keep an eye on the CKM Red Rugby League page. As soon as we know anything, we'll be letting you guys know, but as the lay of the land currently is, NARL postponed to 2022, but the Canada Cup is still going ahead. So there will be some North American Rugby League. And on the topic of North America as well, as you pointed out to me just a few, maybe about an hour ago before we went live, it's great to see that the USARL are now acknowledging California as well, California Rugby League. There was a little bit of infighting there, as well as with the NARL, but it seems that everyone is taking a more joined up approach now. And even when you go onto the USARL's official website, you will now see that California Rugby League are now featured as a partner.
Yeah, it's a big time move. They've been making waves over the last couple of years. It's been crazy to watch how well they've gone. They've been featured all over, and yeah, they've got I don't know how many clubs they've got at the moment. It's something ridiculous. They've had tons of exhibition games pre-COVID. They were right as COVID was starting over there in the States when sports were shutting down. They were 2 weeks away from playing an exhibition game that was in a 4,000 seat stadium, and it was sold out. They've been making moves over there. They've got some big boppers. They've been putting out the highlight reels. It's, in terms of marketing, it's been the CRL and the NARL marketing for the USARL in America. Go figure. But it's great to see that they're now recognised as an official sponsor. Potentially that could mean that we have a combined California Rugby League side in a USARL competition next year. It could be that we see someone like an LA Mongrel in the USARL as part of the Western Conference next year. It opens the doors up for so many opportunities, and for the players as well. It means that they're now officially able to be picked for US representative sides. That's huge. That opens up a talent pool for hundreds, thousands of potential new players, depending on how quickly the CRL can grow. So, it's fantastic for them. Hopefully they're able to get a competition up and running, their own. I say local, it's California. It's a bloody big state, but potentially their own CRL, state competition. And then out of that, they have a team play for the USARL or the NARL or whatever it may be. But great to see. It's great for the sport of rugby league, and it opens up some more opportunities if we ever decide to do another test match over there. If we ever decide to take a I mean, State of Origin over there was a thing once.
Yeah.
Maybe we, I'm not saying it'll be something like that, but maybe we have a pre-season exhibition. Winter in California is still bloody nice. Why not take a charity shield to California?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't long ago that we were discussing a Kangaroos match in Hawaii. That was only 2-3 years ago. So, I mean, large Polynesian culture in Hawaii. You could definitely get people on board there. And I mean, the America now has the potential of one of the best talent pathways in regards to mapping that out. I mean, if you have the East and the Western division, you then have essentially State of Origin set up, or whatever they market it as East versus West. The players that then play East versus West are best in line to make the USA squad. And it's a similar setup to then what the Australians have with, what you used to have with city versus country. So you got, junior clubs, whatever it's called now, with the Queensland Cup and the New South Wales Cup, and then you're up into NRL, Origin, city versus country, and then up to international level and Prime Minister's 13 or whatever they're going to run now as part of their talent development pathway. The USA is in a great position to emulate that and have, who's to say, 20 years' time, as much success with the amount of emerging crossover athletes that you're getting, because some of these boys most of these boys are athletes. They are players that have come from football. They are players that have come from basketball. Big bodies, athletically styled, plenty of training, just honing some of those fine-tuned skills. America's an exciting place.
You saw as well with a lot of the NARL signings that potentially could now go to the USARL. These are rugby union boys that are coming over that are still playing rugby union, mind you, but these are players who have played in the top flight of domestic rugby union in America. Some of these guys have played internationally for America in both 7s and 15s. These are some strong boys that are coming in that already know and just have to kind of change the nuances and the plays. But yeah, the thing that worries me, and we'll leave it at this and move on after, but the thing that worries me is you go back far enough with rugby league in America, and we definitely are as qualified to say this as someone like a Nate Gladden, who runs the Rugby League America podcast. But they build up and they look good, and then something happens and they fall back to a position that's worse than what they were when they started. We saw that 10 years ago with the North American Rugby League that then became the USARL. I forget what it was. I think it might have been AMRL prior to what is now the Hawks. We saw what happened with what were then the Tomahawks 5 years ago. The infighting there then meant that it became the USA Hawks, and the superb quarterfinal run that they had in the World Cup in 2008, and then again in 2012, I think. Don't quote me. I think it was then there, or 2009 and 2013, has now become a point where they got beat by Jamaica to have to then play against a superior Cook Islands side and miss out on this year's World Cup. There's always something that happens that means they get pushed back.
Yeah, definitely. With that, then, we will move on to some more recent history, and that is this week's NRL roundup. It was another huge week in the NRL, some more big blowouts. You saw the Storm looking like they were going to ton up against the Tigers this weekend, going almost a point a minute, going 66-16. The Sea Eagles, again, a third week successively that they've exceeded 50 points. Just some big games, some big blowouts, and again, we're seeing that big disparity between your top and bottom teams in the NRL, and it's becoming a bit of an issue to the point where the only games that are really worth watching are anyone in the top four playing each other and anyone in the bottom four playing each other, and then anything that's in the mid-table is a little bit of a write-off unless you're a diehard for one of those teams. But I mean, what can the NRL do at this point. The game's so quick. You've got so many gun players putting on individual performances. I mean, Manly this week, as we mentioned, hit 50. Did it without Trebojevic. Big. That's huge.
We should preface saying Jake, not Tom.
Yeah, not Tom. Yeah. But Manly are looking good. I quite like that they're a little bit reborn. Apparently, Buzz Rothfield is saying there's some off-field drama that could potentially derail their season. Take everything with he says with a little bit of salt, but I mean the guys over at Manly are going pretty well right now. I do like the fact that they have turned their season around, considering where they were many weeks ago when they were very, very much struggling against teams like Brisbane, and now they're running out and putting up big points and looking good, and all their moves seem to be coming off absolutely perfectly. The news that Josh Schuster was in line for an Origin call-up, if it wasn't for the fact that he's pulled up with a calf injury. They've got talent coming through, and they're looking good. But as we said at the beginning of this segment, the top and bottom is really now set apart on a drift. I mean, what's your thoughts on this?
There are some games that you watch because you want to watch, because it's your team. There are games that you want to watch because it has implications for how your team might fare on the ladder. And then there are games that you either watch it because you just have to, want to, nothing else on. And there's just games that you don't watch. And I don't know what can change. We mentioned it yesterday. We shared a tweet that was posted last night, I believe it was. I'll very quickly scroll down and find it. Fun fact, the Tigers and Titans conceded a combined total of 23 tries this round, the same amount of tries that Panthers conceded in the first 14 matches of this year. If you dive into that a little bit more, the margin between the Bunnies and the Broncos, the Storm and the Tigers, Manly and the Titans, and the Eels Dogs, so 4 games in one round. If you add the total of those margins up, it is more than what Penrith have conceded throughout the entire year. And that's a Penrith side who in 2 of the last 3 weeks have had half their Origin side out and conceded the best part of, I believe, 45, 50 points. There is a huge disparity. And this is, mind you, the Titans were up 24-8 at halftime against Manly. Manly ran in a 48-0 second half. Tom Trebojevic had a hat-trick. Ruben Garrick had a hat-trick in the second half alone. It could have been more, but Garrick kicked like 6 of 12. Bloody Jason Saab had a second half double. You look at Parramatta, they were down 10-6 and put 30 on the Dogs in the second half. They scored 2 tries in 3 minutes, twice. You look at the Storm, as you mentioned, at one point, for a lot of the game, they were running at a point a minute. It was 50-0. And Bellyache would have been mad that they conceded 16. And, I mean, say what you want about Brisbane. The Bunnies put 46 on them. And, I don't know, man. I don't know what's going on. I watch these games because I play Supercoach. I play Supercoach. My line of work now means I'm around rugby league all the time. So sometimes I'm there at the game, working the game. And even now, I'm catching myself and thinking, can I be bothered? Do I really want to? The attraction's not there anymore. Credit to Brisbane. They can see that and they're trying something out. They buggered off Peter Nolan, who arguably should have been gone last year. Kevy Walters apparently is on the outer. Players aren't happy with how he coaches. Players are confused about his tactics. They brought Ben Eichen in. That's a huge start. That's his old club. That's a club he's so proud of and has openly come out for years on NRL 360 and pinpointed what Brisbane have done wrong, where they can do better. And now he has the chance to do that as head of football. You've got players like Azarko, who could be gone at the end of the year. Xavier Coates is gone at the end of the year. Fans don't want him in the side now. Corey Oates wants an immediate release. You'd argue if Tessie New hadn't got the call up, he'd be arguing for a release as well. Some of these players, like Pangai, who, like, he announced on national TV that he's gone. He's open to anyone. And you got the likes of the Dogs circling, you got the Tigers circling, you got the Dragons circling. Crap, it wouldn't surprise me if Parramatta's circle, because who the hell doesn't want Tavita Pangai Jr. on your side? Yeah, he's good for a suspension every year, but when he's on the field, he's a gun. You look at the Dogs. You don't see where it's coming from. Flanagan's playing New South Wales Cup, and even then he's not looking like he's enjoying it. You look at the Tigers. 1 week they're playing like premiership contenders, another week they're getting punched out by 50. It's the same with the Titans. Even the Roosters got pumped. The Roosters got pumped by 26. I don't know, man.
It's really tough. It's really tough. I mean, the guys. People talk a lot about confidence players. Realistically, everyone's a confidence player. Look at Offa Hengawi now. He's at the Tigers. He was in a Brisbane side, in a very similar position to Tavita Pangai Jr., where you are given an enforcer role, but also when you're too tough with that, you cop a suspension, the fans get on your back, and that's it. You're in a role where you're expected to step up and be a leader, but then you're also accountable for the mistakes. And that's a lot of what you're seeing with TPJ. It's a lot of what you saw with Offa Hengawi. It's a lot of what you're seeing with Jermaine Isako. Isako was your first choice fullback. He was in line for your captaincy. Even Matt Lodge, linked for weeks on weeks with the Knights, now on the outer. Tessie New, who was linked profusely with the Gold Coast Titans last year, especially with news that his cousin David Fafita Jr. would be going there, and Brisbane fans fought to keep him. Can't get into the side. He has to wait for Isako to have an absolute howler before he steps up. Meanwhile, they're pulling, Tyson Gamble from reserve grade to step up and play. They're pulling Albert Kelly on a train as a pay-as-you-play contract, essentially. David Mead, who's been around the block on more than a few occasions. If you're not nurturing that talent, somebody else will, and that's what the Titans are looking to do. But again, people are talking about this is what you're seeing now, and you're seeing it with Queensland teams. I mean, you've gone from a point where Queensland were running out Origin, blowing out the Blues most years with that golden generation, Slater, Lockyer, Thurston, Parker, all those players. And now the teams that are getting blown out on a near weekly basis are your North Queensland Cowboys. Not so much your Gold Coast Titans, but that's because they've recruited pretty heavily. They are your Brisbane Broncos. The teams that are situated and playing in Queensland are struggling right now. And they need to look at their development pathways and work to retain those players and keep them in Queensland so that they can have a better hope. And I mean, you saw it in Origin just a few weeks ago. Yes, the Blues had a plethora of players to pick from who are riding the confidence high right now. And do you know what? A lot of people can argue that based on eligibility rules, and if the international calendar was running as it should be, players like Luai, players like Toto don't get a call up because of obviously the tier system and everything else and making them eligible. But it's one of those things. If the rules are there and it means that they can't do it and they make themselves eligible the same way that I don't know if at the time Taumalolo would put his hand up and say, yeah, I want to run out for Queensland. I doubt there'd be many people wearing maroon that would be complaining about that. So it swings and roundabouts. But at the minute, the NRL needs to find a way to close that gap between the top and the bottom. And at the minute, it doesn't look like there's a way of doing that anytime soon. And that's what's making it a real struggle. I mean, you look at the results over the course of the weekend, the only games that were potentially worth watching were that Cowboys Sharks game, Panthers versus Roosters, just because it was a top four clash, Knights versus Warriors, Dragons versus Raiders, and then the first half of the Eels versus the Bulldogs, and then second half was just a bit of a blowout. Anything else, just blowout, not worth watching. One of those games where you get 40 minutes in, you see that there's going to be no real storyline to this game, with the exception of maybe someone gets sent for a high shot or anything like that. But I mean, that's just the landscape of the game right now. It's not all doom and gloom. There will be a way to refine it and fix the machine and get it running as it's supposed to be. But right now, the NRL is very much struggling to maintain. I mean, people have got a shorter attention span than they used to, and I credit social media profusely for that, with the amount of short form content that you do get. So to sit through 80 minutes when it's maybe not your team or maybe a game you're not as interested in, it's challenging. It's very challenging, and that's part of what you're seeing right now.
I had a buddy over on Thursday for the Broncos game. Previously worked at News Corp, did digital media, social media, worked with the NRL, worked with Cricket Australia, a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah, I mean, working in the media kind of ruins your passion for the sport. But he sat down for the first time in about 5 years and watched the Broncos game with me. And he straight up said, this is a joke. It's an absolute joke. You look at the talent, I'm trying not to harp on Brisbane because it's not just a Brisbane problem. But a lot of it in Queensland stems from that club who for years, basically since their inception, were dominant, were always there or thereabouts. It's a team that even still has Payne Haas, Matt Lodge. You've got Pat Carrigan coming up, Tom Flegler coming up. Albert Kelly didn't really look out of place, if I'm being completely honest. He looked okay. Even Tyson Gamble has had sparks of brilliance. You've got players like Tessie New, who was Brisbane's best player over the first 5 weeks, who got dropped. And he's getting dropped for Jesse Arthurs? Really? It took, like you said, it took an Isako crap snort for New to get his spot back. Something's got to change. Something has to change. The last thing I want to bring up, because we could go for hours and hours on this. At least I know I could. I'm looking at the Origin team list now. Announced yesterday. You go back to an Origin side of 5 years ago for Queensland, where we're at the back end of Cronk, we're at the back end of Slater. You have Smith, you have Thurston. If there's no Thurston, it's Michael Morgan, Daly Cherry Evans. You have 5 years ago, you're thinking of just Gagai at his prime, Chambers at his prime. You think of a plethora of forwards that would match it up. I say Grubs, but you Maguire. I was going to say Grubby Maguire, but Grubby Origin Maguire on top was one of the best forwards. He was an absolute gun. Josh Papali'i was starting to rise up. Felice Kafusi was starting to rise up. These are teams that had Ben Hunt and Andrew McCulloch waiting in the wings, hoping for an opportunity. It was a gun side, and they had that dynasty. You now look at the side for Game 2 that has a 7-game NRL player in Reece Walsh at fullback. He's played superbly. 7 games before your Origin debut, though, I don't know about that. I don't know how he's going to go in Origin. You have Holmes and Felt, 2 very good players, Holmes absolutely felt. Got his opportunity, didn't do a lot right, but also didn't do a lot wrong in Origin 1. Would still prefer to see Dane Gagai out there, but you'll take it. The aforementioned Gagai with Capewell in the centres. Kurt Capewell got burnt by Tom Trebojevic, and he's going to again. I don't see how he's still at centre. That had to be change number 1. Munster and Daly against Jerome and Nathan. Probably the most even battle of the night. You go to the forwards. Welch and Papali'i against Junior Paulo and Dan Saifidi. Welch had game 1 cut short. Papali'i didn't really have... Well, Papali'i, wasn't there. Interesting. Your hookers. Cookie against McCulloch. Serviceable out of dummy half. Great defender. McCulloch over Cook. Don't know. Kafusi, Arrow, Fa'asu Malawi against Murray, Sims, and Yo. Really?
Yeah.
Like, I could go on for days. I really could. You've got a US rep in Mulatalo as a 19th man. Cohen Hess is named as the 18th man. How Hess is still getting called up to Queensland, I think just kind of demonstrates how thin Queensland stocks are. He hasn't been in the Cowboys side half this year. So,
yeah.
I don't know.
But for a more in-depth view of the of State of Origin, join us tomorrow, actually, for our Origin preview. It's going to be a little bit of a longer preview. We'll harp on that one, go through all the lineups, and give you our thoughts, as well as some tips on that one. So definitely join us for that, and that'll segue us into our final topic. We will be heading to my hemisphere now, up in the north. Super League still riddled with the C word. Game fell last week, 2 games the week before. Leeds, unfortunately, my city, at the centre of it on both occasions. This week, unable to fulfil their fixture with Catalans. The week before, I believe it was Castleford. But, I mean, at the minute, the UK is still facing problems. You've got the Delta variant now running rampant over here, having a great time. So, but with bubbles being talked about and Super League still trying to maintain, you've got international games this week. So it used to be England versus the Exiles. Now you've got England versus the Combined Nations All-Stars, which doesn't quite have the same ring to it, but we'll roll with it. So, I mean, that's going to be interesting, as well as England's women taking on Wales this weekend as well. 5 uncapped women will be called up to the England squad, but we'll talk a little bit more about Super League. Some close games this week in Super League. St Helens and Warrington. Warrington winning that one 6 points to 2. Hull KR getting a shock win over Wigan, 18 points to 8. And the most controversial game of the week has to be Salford versus the Huddersfield Giants, where the referee played a game that we like to call "Whose Card Is It Anyway?" when he wrongfully sent off the wrong player and kept on Salford's Dan Sarginson. For anyone that knows Salford and Dan Sarginson, he is, of course, their fullback. If the team loses their fullback, that's a great big problem. Instead, he sent off one of their forwards. And it's safe to say the Huddersfield Giants are not the happiest team in the UK about that right now. I mean, Super League, it just is what it is. I mean, the Leeds Centurions are still without a win in 2021. They went down to Hull FC on Saturday, losing 64-22. And then on Wednesday, the Castleford Tigers took a win out against Wakefield Trinity. But of course, there is the overwhelming fear that the Super League season may potentially be at a point again where we see large amounts of cancellations similar to that of 2020. Of course, the 2021 season is still running in similar fashion to the 2022 season, and the competition is done on percentage. So it's not done on points, it's done as a percentage of wins of fixtures fulfilled, which may not be the best way or easiest way of working things out. But I mean, it's the only way you can do it when you've got a team from France travelling back and forth into what is widely regarded as a COVID hotspot. You've got teams in and around COVID hotspots, teams in Yorkshire, a lot of them having to try and fulfill fixtures. But Super League, still to their credit, trying to crack on and with the testing and things like that. But as we mentioned, England will be in action this weekend. So while you've got the Origin break, you've also got England versus the Combined Nations All-Stars. You will be seeing a host of former NRL talent in there, as well as some talent that will be heading to the NRL next year. You'll be seeing the likes of Oliver Gildart and Jackson Hastings, who are both, of course, at Wigan, but will be Tigers bound next year. So get a look at them, see them in action if you can. I think that game should be on. I'm not sure what station that'll be on your side, but I know that'll be on Sky Sports over here in the UK, so definitely check that out. I'm not 100% as to whether the women's England versus Wales game will be broadcast. I really do hope it is, because the women's game needs that kind of traction. It's going to be a great game. You've got the likes of Fran Goldthorpe and Caitlin Beavers from Leeds, Georgia Rush from Castleford, a bunch of the York stars in Rihanna Marshall and Kelsey Gentles and players like that who are just, they're guns. And you know what? For those people who will be wanting to check them out ahead of the World Cup as well, so you people that are in the Southern Hemisphere wanting to see who you're up against and trying to retain your title against, definitely check out the England squad and give that game a watch if you can. But I think that will do us there, unless you have any closing sentiments, Luke.
Nah, I mean, from your sake, I do hope that women's game is played. The women's game needs more exposure, and it's not just in the UK, obviously Australia as well. I do want to throw in there. We've had, not only some NRL here in Australia. I had to try and figure out where the hell I was there for a second. But we also had some international games as well. We can't forget our boys from Brazil. They went up against the Philippines, and the Philippines won. For those that have been around with CKM for a couple of years, you'll know that we exclusively covered the Emerging Nations World Cup, of which Philippines was part of, and the Goodwin boys were in fine form again against Brazil. That was a fantastic turn-up. The Fiji New South Wales Cup side, they showed up. It was superb to see them get around International Rugby League. We've also got Malta. They're holding something this week. They're at Belmore Sports Ground. They're up against, I want to say Fiji for youth and women's, and I believe Lebanon as well. Let me do some quick investigative research. Malta Rugby League. So we'll get this right. Malta, of course, were also in the Emerging Nations World Cup. Jared Samet, who's currently over there in the UK doing some good stuff, was a key player in that Emerging Nations World Cup. It is Malta and Lebanon. Lebanon obviously have been in the World Cup last time out. It's going to be a cracking game. It is at Belmore Oval. The women and the men are both playing. I think it's only 30-minute halves instead of 40. So do keep that in mind. And then, so under 16s, under 18s, both, women and men for Malta and Lebanon are playing. It looks like Fiji. It is Fiji and Lebanon in the 16s at 2:30. Under 18s, Fiji, Lebanon, 3:45. The women are doing a bit of a round robin. It's quite interesting. So there's a 5 o'clock game, a 5:40 game, and a 6:20 game for the women. 5 o'clock Malta, Fiji, 5:40 Lebanon, Fiji, 6:20 Malta and Lebanon. And then the men at 7:30 will kick off Malta and Lebanon. It's an interesting one. It's quite a big day of rugby league there at Belmore. But get out there, support all three teams. I'm assuming that the Fijian boys will show up to support their women as well, their national women's team. But it's not only State of Origin this week. There is International Rugby League in one of the rugby league heartlands of Belmore Oval. Hopefully, it'd be great to see the hill packed out. We're all for expansion. That's what we're here for. Get around it.
Yep, it's worthwhile noting as well, while we're on the topic of Brazil and the Philippines, there was a new international record set that weekend. and that is that Paul Sheedy, former Melbourne Storm player and Philippine international, is now a proud record holder. He is the oldest person to ever score in a recognised international sanction match at 40 years and 111 days, I think it was. So congratulations to Paul and the Philippines there. It's great to see him still involved, still getting about. I mean, at 40, you'll be lucky if I can get 10 minutes out of my body, but Paul's still doing his bit, still developing the Philippines. So credit to him, credit to the boys out there that are doing the work. And I think that's a nice note to sign off on. So I think we will wrap it there. Guess it's just time to thank you for joining us. We are absolutely ecstatic that you have took time out of your busy schedule to be joining us as we talk you through the world of rugby league. As we mentioned, plenty to get around. All the links will be on socials, so get around it. Follow Serbia. Keep an eye out on the expanding nations as well. And no, thank you very much for joining us. We will see you